So Helen Church is a wildlife ecologist in Humane Society International. That's where she manages disaster response grants, supporting wildlife carers across Australia. She also manages the Wildlife Land Trust, HSI's private land conservation program, and assists with threatened species and habitat protection. She loves spending time in nature and is passionate about protecting native animals and the wild spaces they call home. So I'd like to welcome Helen Church from her presentation for Disaster Response Program.
Oh, hello. Okay, so yes, my name is Helen. I work for Humane Society International Australia, and today, with the conclusion of our grants program earlier this year, I'd like to just sort of go through, reflect on the work we've done, the impact we've had, the sort of grants that we've supported and helped out with, and just kind of see how we've been doing the past 3 years. During this time, I'll also like to go through what our future is going to look like. So we all know disasters are probably going to get worse. So I'll be looking at Humane Society International's role when disasters will be getting more frequent, more severe, and more volatile in the coming years. Sorry, gonna have to look at what I've written. So Humane Society International Australia, or you can just call us HSI, is an animal welfare and conservation charity. We're based in Sydney, but we do work all around Australia at the state, federal and local levels. We are a very collaborative charity, so we work with governments, leading researchers, other NGOs on a really wide range of issues, basically building practical solutions for creating a better world for animals. We have a lot of campaigns. We work on a really wide range of issues, so you might have heard of us from quite a few spaces. A couple of our key ones, we nominate threatened species and their habitats for legal protection in Australia. We fight to improve the welfare of farm animals, particularly chickens and sheep in Australia. We fight the wildlife trade, both within Australia and internationally. And one of our key campaigns this year is championing for stronger nature laws. So building that framework that will better help us protect wildlife and their habitats from all sorts of threats. So my role in HSI is to manage a couple of programs. The first one is the Wildlife Land Trust. I think we have a few members here today. This is our private land conservation program. Basically, we support people who own land and are managing it for the benefit of wildlife, and we give them a bit of a platform to share their stories, to learn more about how to conserve their land, that sort of thing. And my other program is our disaster response grants. So cute. So these grants were created, as many were, back in 2019, right when those bushfires were just starting to get severe. They've run for 3 years, so they've just closed earlier this year. And this was our first foray into both grants and into directly supporting wildlife carers. So we saw this niche where support was needed. It's a bit of a learning curve for us. We didn't know too much about the grant space. So we just sort of learnt it as it all came in. We did talk to a lot of people in the firegrounds, RFS people, wildlife carers, shelters, governments. We were on ground in Kangaroo Island talking to people, seeing what was needed and how we could help. Was a bit tricky because we didn't really have these support structures, but our Wildlife Land Trust network actually came in really handy. This network spans all across Australia. It's landowners, but it's also wildlife carers. These people own properties that are rehabilitation sites, release sites, And a lot of our members were working with the RFS or supporting carers in their area. So we had this really great direct line to affected communities during this time. So grant requests started pouring in, and we were trying to sort of work out what we could do to help. We had a really fantastic outpouring of support from our donors, both within Australia, but also all around the world. A lot of our donors saw and our supporters saw what was happening in Australia. They really wanted to help the people on the front lines, the people actually caring for these animals. So that's what we did for them. We established this grant program. 100% of the donations went into disaster response. And we also made sure that we showed those donors what we were doing and how their donations were actually helping, keeping that very open line of communication, so they could see, that work was being done on the front lines for these carers. During this time, I was sort of trying to work out how the paperwork would work and everything. But the main thing I tried to think about during this time was making the grants easy to apply for and simple. In a disaster, you don't want to have to think about answering emails and filling out forms and getting reporting in and things like that. So we made them very quick, very simple. We supported people as much as we could. We helped them write their grant applications, just making it easy. So we have a lot of different grants. I've sort of grouped them into 3 different categories just to make it easier to talk about. The first one is our urgent grants. Pretty self-explanatory. These are the ones that come in right in the middle of disaster. It's carers that need extra equipment, extra supplies, vet visits, emergency repairs, things like that, that are just sort of unexpected expenses that come through right in the middle of a disaster, the worst possible time, as usual. So we supplied things like humidicribs, ICUs, wildlife food, teats, emergency cages, things like that for these ones. These are usually quite quick, quite sort of smaller grants, usually sort of a one-off grant just to help them right through this difficult time. The second one is capacity building. So as we've heard a little bit today, right after a disaster is kind of a very difficult time for wildlife carers, as I'm sure many of you know. You're getting new animals in with all sorts of complications. You're getting your regular intake of animals. You're going to be running out of space and supplies and resources for these animals. So these grants were just to build capacity. So after a disaster, we'd work with the carers, see where we could maybe increase their efficiency or their space or what they could care for. Usually this involved building enclosures, expanding enclosures, making things a little bit more accessible within the property, just that sort of thing. And we also helped with some relocations to sort of free up space in these properties so we could bring more animals in. And the final one is disaster preparedness. So these are really big grants, very involved. They usually require a site visit or 2. And for these, we talk to the carer, we find out what the need is. There's a little bit more eligibility need for these ones. So these are things like triage centers, treatment rooms, crisis containers. So we wanted carers who were servicing a wide area, who had a network of wildlife carers around them that they could support with these infrastructure projects. And they could also support vets, volunteers, that sort of thing, right in the middle of a disaster. Since these are such big, expensive grants, they're also multi-use. So they can be used for all sorts of disasters, but also in peace times, they can be used for housing joeys, storage rooms, just whatever they can be used for. You can change them up and move them around, and they're always going to be in use. So I thought I'd just go through kind of like a case study of each of these 3 grant types, just to show you how they work and the sort of things we were supporting. So the first one, just as an example, is Amaris Wildlife Rehabilitation Shelter. I think that's a little bit further south. I think it was back in 2022, there was those big bushfires in WA. They raged through all these forests. There was so many animals coming into care, needing a lot of support, having burns, orphans, that sort of thing. So carers were dealing with this big influx of animals that needed a lot of care. Just to make matters worse, there was a lot of blackouts and a lot of phone lines down. So these self-contained wildlife shelters suddenly didn't have power and couldn't support things like ICUs or even running water in some cases. So that's what happened to Amaris. We talked to Maggie, the owner of Amaris, and we managed to supply her with an ICU and a generator. This was to help her, so she was able to continue taking on animals that needed that critical care during this really difficult time. And that was quite lucky because very soon after, Layla came into care. She's a critically endangered Western ringtail. She weighed only 90 grams, so she was an orphan, and usually at this age, these possums would be unviable. But because we supplied this, Maggie was able to give her a chance. Layla spent 2 weeks in critical condition. She stabilized, she put on weight, really great, came out of the ICU, and we also got a recent update from Maggie who says that Layla is now very healthy. She's very inquisitive and active. She likes to climb. And yeah, she's going to be able to be released back into her population and play that really important role in her species survival, which is really great. So our capacity building projects. For this one, I chose Misty Hills Wombat Sanctuary because I love wombats. So wombats in the eastern states have had a really rough time of it over the last couple of years. They've been impacted by the bushfires, we've had floods, we've had droughts, and they've also been affected by some really bad mange outbreaks. So all of this is compiled into carers having to deal with a lot of animals, a lot of orphans, and there's a huge need for more carers in the area and more rescue and release sites. Wombats need a lot of care. I think they need about 2 years of dedicated care. They need a lot of space to learn how to forage and how to dig and how to socialize. And they also need a lot of space when they are released because they're such territorial animals. So we needed some sites that we could release animals on that would be far away from some aggressive males and would also have, you know, not be too near any roads or farmers with guns or anything like that. So Misty Hills was perfect for this. It's already a wombat sanctuary. So what we did was we just improved their capacity and made it so they were able to release more animals on this site and care for more animals. So this was kind of a multifactorial grant. We had a few areas that we wanted to sort of target to build this shelter's capacity. The first one was treating all the wild wombats already there for mange. Obviously, this just helps the local population, and it also means that we can release animals on this site safely and not have to worry about them coming back in with pretty terrible disease. So that was good. All worked well. We also graded the access tracks. So there was this track right in the middle of the property that was just so degraded you couldn't use it. And by grading this, we were able to open up a whole new section of the sanctuary that we could use to actually care for animals. So that was great. And finally, building some enclosures. That's one of them there, very sturdy, as you'd have to have for wombats. They're also portable. They're customizable. You can change the shape and the size of them. You can take them down and put them somewhere else. And obviously these are just really good for pre-release enclosures. You can see there's a couple wombats in there and they're quite happy. They can dig, they can climb around and eat grass. And these can open up for soft release later on. So a lot of wombats much happier now because of this. They got more space, they got more resources. One of the bushfire victims was called Enzo. He was a joey rescued by RFS volunteers with lots of burns on him. And so far he's doing really well. I think he's just been soft released. So it's been a long road for a lot of these wombats, but they're starting to see a bit of improvement now. And obviously these can be used just into the future forever. So that's really good to see. So disaster preparedness. For this one, I chose Badgerys Creek, which is just down south in New South Wales, nearly Victoria. This was a very dramatic case. 3 bushfires happened to appear in 2019 in this area. They converged in the forests around Badgerys Creek and created a mega fire. This was a pretty terrible situation. A lot of the sanctuary was damaged. A lot of the infrastructure there was just completely melted. The animals that had been released around that area were killed. And Peter and Mimi, the owners of this sanctuary, just barely managed to escape with the joeys that they had. So they had to start from scratch, basically. We first heard from Peter, who is a WLT member as well. He was working with volunteer vets. They were right back into it as soon as they could get back on the land, rescuing kangaroos, trying to treat them. They had a makeshift triage center, which was basically just canvas on poles with dirt floor and a couple of tables. But they were doing the best with what they could actually get. First off, we just wanted to help them rebuild a little bit of the sanctuary. So we helped them rebuild the fences around the property for the soft release animals. We built some joey shelters so they didn't have to have them in their house. And we found a new water tank for them because theirs was just completely melted. So we basically just got them back to that like base level functionality. After that, we sort of had a look at the sanctuary and we realized that this was a really good candidate for disaster preparedness. It services a very wide area. I think the region is no stranger to disasters with so many forests around. Peter is really great. He works with a lot of vets and other wildlife carers. He works with large macropods, and he can also take in other animals as well. So we had a really good opportunity here to build a triage center that would be able to help with a lot of disasters, would be able to support a lot of wildlife carers in the region and hopefully save a lot of animals. So this triage center, we sort of built it along with Peter, along with a couple of vets. We worked with builders, contractors, just to design it as well as we could, since it was quite expensive. It's custom built for kangaroos, so all the doors are very wide and we can fit them in there. It's got some isolation rooms on either side that open up into outdoor enclosures, which is really cool and can be used for quite a lot of things. The main room has plenty of storage. It has a kitchenette, has a feeding area, it has a table, and this is also supported with solar panels and a generator too. So it can be used for a lot of things, depending on the disaster. Hopefully it'll be able to support vets. It can be used as a HQ for things. It can be used as the triage. And in calmer times like now, we've had a look at it and it's being used for quarantining new arrivals, looking after animals that need that extra bit of care. It's also a joey feeding room at the moment and a storage facility. So yeah, it's really good to see these being used even in the nice times. So just here's a couple of stats if you guys like numbers. We overall helped provide 200 grants to carers. Our network now spans 120 carers, up from 0 at the start of 2019. And these grants range from a couple of hundred to tens of thousands. So it's a very big range. But all of these grants are designed to provide the most amount of care to the most amount of animals for what they were. And overall, that was $1.8 million of funds. And just to reiterate, all of these funds were donated. So that's just such an amazing thing to be able to help people and to, you know, have this support network of people that will provide funds for these disasters in the future. I'd just like to say that every single carer we worked with was incredible. They were so helpful. They provided amazing pictures. All of these pictures are from our carers. And they help build these stories that is really good for our supporters and our donors to see what they've actually done. Obviously, the most important number of all is not up there. We don't know how many animals we saved. I would like to say it's in the thousands at least. And there's just a huge range of animals that we've helped. There's been so many disasters over the last couple of years. But through those floods and fires and droughts and everything, I think we've helped save a lot of animals. I just wanted to put a little slide up of all the cutest ones, I think. So yeah, you can see here, there's a huge range of animals. And it's just great to know that these wildlife carers were able to do the work that they do best. And they've all been so resourceful in using our funds for the most amount of animals. So that's really good to see. I like the dancing bat is probably my favorite. So we do have some other projects that we are supporting along with this grant program. This is just one small section of the work that HSI has been doing. So first of all, we're trying to fill that niche of that lack of emergency responders that are trained with wildlife. We saw this a lot in the Black Summer and in a couple of other disasters. There's just not that many people that are trained in wildlife rescue. Everything sort of ends up being ad hoc. A lot of people are just sort of forced into these situations that they don't want to be in. So we've created this little team of first responders that we're hoping that will be able to help in the future. We're trained in fire management, disaster management, wildlife rescue, first aid, that sort of thing. So hoping to get a nice wide range of experience so we are prepared for any disaster. We're now a recognised wildlife emergency response task force in New South Wales, and we're hoping to expand that to other states as well, so we can be on call for boots on the ground wherever we're needed. We've also invested in some new technology, such as a thermal drone, so that can fly above fire grounds and disaster areas. It can find wildlife through heat. And it can also be a really good tool for surveying the landscape, seeing what's out there, not having to run straight into a very dangerous situation. You can see it from above and you can find out, if it's accessible. And we've also got 3 inflatable field stations. There's us trying to set one up. You need more than 4 people, we found out. They're pretty big. But these are great. They can be used as accommodation, triage centres, treatment rooms, whatever you need. They're inflatable, so that means they're portable. They package up into a really nice little tiny package. And but they can be deployed wherever they're needed. They can be used for a wide range of things. And that's why we invested in them. We want to be able to send these out to communities that need them. So you don't always have to have a big shelter already there. HSI is very, very experienced in lobbying governments. We like to tell people what to do. So that's what we'll be doing as well. We've been working with governments, telling them what is needed for future disasters, what went wrong in the Black Summer disasters. We have created a report, Safeguarding Australia's Wildlife. You can read that online if you like. And that kind of goes through a lot of the carers' experiences and the rescuers' experiences and how the things that they think are needed in future disasters as well, because that's so important to share. We'll also be helping scientists build reports on fire management into the future as well. And we're also part of HSI's global disaster response team. So this is part of a team of people from all around the world. And so whenever there's a disaster in another country, we can be deployed out there. We now have the training. Recently, a few of our team were deployed out to Turkey to help with the post-earthquake relief. So we focused on animals in that situation, helping all the strays, feeding them, making sure they were safe, helping people find their pets and be reunited with them. So with this, we're helping, other countries and other communities, but we're also building our experience, which is really valuable. And what are our next steps with our disaster response? Hate to say it, but we all know it. Disasters are going to get worse. So I think it's best to, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. We are, with this in mind, closing our current grants program, which may sound a little bit strange, but what we want to do is prioritize our urgent grants for the disasters that we're expecting to see in the coming few months, few years, that sort of thing. We want to be able to provide our funds and our grants to the people that really, really need it right in the middle of these disasters, so we can help the most amount of animals and the highest number of people as well. I think we've all sort of seen what's happening up in the Northern Hemisphere right now, so I think we might be in for a pretty rough summer. So watch this space. We'll be rolling out new strategies soon. During this time, we'll also be working with state and federal governments. As I said, it's very important to work with governments to help them. They need people to tell them what's important, to give them advice, and to provide support for them. So we'll be hoping to support other governments as disasters occur, so they have, people that they can talk to about it. And we'll also be continuing to build our experience and our network. As I said, we've started this 3 years ago. We've built a really beautiful network of people that we are able to talk to now. We've built our experience up. We're not quite as green as we were, but there's still so much that needs to be done. There's so much that we can do to help. So we're trying to become as organized and as prepared as possible for this. That's it. I think I was very quick, actually. So you can get involved. HSI is a really great charity. We work on so many different things for the environment and also for domestic animals. So if you want to learn more about our campaigns, you can head to our website. There we also have petitions you can sign. You can get involved in some of our programs. You can get involved in some of our long-term goals as well. And I will have to plug the Wildlife Land Trust as well. This is my program. I love it. It's open to anyone that owns more than 1 acre of land. If you're supporting wildlife on your property or habitat on your property, highly recommend that you join. I think we have around 840 members spanning 85,000 hectares across Australia right now. So it's a really beautiful community. It also means we'll be able to get in touch with you if there is disasters in your area, and just have that connection with you guys. So you can head to our website there. You get a free sign too if you sign up. And yeah, that's about it. Thank you.